All right, Andrew, thank you so much for being a guest today on the Holistica podcast. I am really excited to interview you regarding everything that you're doing day in, day out with clients. I know I've sent plenty of clients to you that I've gotten such great feedback on to support them with like mold inspections within their home and just helping them identify what's going on in their life. And so I think this is going to be a really exciting interview just to kind of get into the nitty gritty of what it is you do every day.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm very, very excited. And thank you for how you help so many people and getting the knowledge out there. The awareness is growing a ton around this information. So
it really is. I know I'm so grateful for that, to have people like yourself and other individuals in the space just like, spreading the info. It's the important thing. So would love to hear a little bit about you. Like, what even got you started in all this? I'm always so interested to hear people's stories.
Yeah. Well, after I learned about all this and was in the industry, I was like, I've definitely been impacted by mold. That's why my immune system was rocked as a kid. There was a lot of connections that started to come up. Parents were like, we did bring a mold dog in and you did have a leak behind your headboard and as you were growing up. And I was like, oh, that's good to know. But and my own wife, she went through that as well. So until you learn, then you kind of connect those dots of when that happened. So when I met a guy in the industry, he introduced me to everything. And then I started shadowing him, and then I saw the bigness of this industry, and it really clicked with a passion of mine with health. Very, very passionate about health. I think if I wasn't in this industry, I would be in kind of all different types of health, whether, spirit, soul, body aspects of health. And the environment was that, final pillar that I didn't know anything about. So I started doing inspections in the Carolinas, and fast forward to now, 7.5+ years later and hundreds of assessments in, I was in 21 states last year doing inspections all around the country and virtual consulting all around the country. But I do love that it's really helping people. And I really see it through the lens of a health procedure rather than just some blue collar, construction based, industry style thing. And so I binged a bunch of doctors and their content around this stuff, all the building professionals, and you just have to stay a student.
Yes.
In this industry. And so it definitely hit home with me and family and my own wife. And then as I started helping clients, it was just tugging on my heartstrings way too much because it impacts finances, mental, relational. It's much bigger than just, again, a aesthetic issue in the home.
No, and I really love how you kind of defined it as a health procedure, because that's why I've sent people to you, is because you're very intentional with how you work with individuals, and you're not just seeing them as like their house, you're seeing them as an actual person that's going through a really hard time, and that you really want to just gain deep insight into what's going on and what you can do to help better their lives. So that's what I want to kind of start the conversation with, is like, what is like your order of operations in terms of like, what are the questions you're starting to ask the clients when you first start working with them that helps you kind of gain greater insight into like what's going on in their environment?
For sure. So when they come from someone like you who does great work for the body,
Thank you.
I already assume that there might be something going on with their health. But if it is someone brand new, the first most basic thing is, do you feel different in the home versus out of the home? Are there any correlations intuitively or with your senses, because your body will communicate to you via symptoms, for any issue in the home? And so some moms just know. I mean, I've had pregnant moms take me right to a hidden issue that would have never been found on the surface. And when I dig there, I'm like, you're exactly right. So I think the body's the best test. I really do. If you feel worse in an environment than out, that's the first signal your body's trying to give you, and following those senses. So when I'm asking questions around health, I'm not getting so tunnel vision on, I'm looking for one symptom that they're, experiencing or whatever. It's very hard to nail down because the symptom list is 50 long. So I'm asking about health first, and then about the home in general, because the home is very much a reflection, like the body in a way. There's many systems at play. And so if one is very impacted, it's going to impact the rest. For instance, one nasty HVAC system that's really, really moldy could turn a very mold safe, very mold free type of home to a really, really rough situation, because that system alone, impacts the entire or a lot of the air quality in the home. So I'm trying to get an idea of age of the home, because then it just helps me on how much history are we inheriting here? Because the older and more seasons it's been through and damages that it could have gone through. age of the HVAC system, and then I want to know what type of foundation they're on. Crawl spaces are not ideal for a lot of reasons, just because they're higher likelihood to fail.
Yeah.
And I do want to say that too, is it's not so cut and dry on like, if you have a crawl space, you're going to have a really unhealthy home, or if this, like, it's not always that cut and dry. Everything can fail and everything can succeed if done well and built well. So there's a lot of things in my questionnaire that kind of helps me lean towards, we might have an uphill battle here based on these different things. But the ones that homeowners can really help with is, do you know of water damage that's happened in the home? Has anything changed in your symptoms, and do you notice when that happened? What are the humidity levels like in your home? How about the dust levels? Any smells you notice? Stains, any signs of water damage, like I mentioned, that can be peeling, swelling of materials. And that's just a start. Once you're in the home, then you can really get a sense of that home as a system. What's the attic like? Foundation underneath, if you can get there. HVAC system. Those are kind of the big three that impact the rest. And then, of course, the places, the hot spots of bathrooms and anywhere water is, really. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, you brought up a lot of good talking points that I feel like we could go on so many tangents on. So I'm going to bring
Wherever you want
it back. I know, I'm excited. I'm going to bring it back to those at some point. But because you brought up dust levels, humidity levels, HVAC system, like these are all things that I think a lot of people need to be really aware of, and like might not even really think or correlate to being an issue in their homes. So really excited to dive into that. But I really want to also just kind of dive into my next question, which is, what is an indoor environmental professional, and like, why is it important to have someone like yourself or another indoor environmental professional IEP on their team? Like, what's kind of like when someone's starting to like, okay, like I'm thinking there might be an issue here. Who should I look up, or how do I find somebody like, who do I want on my team, basically? Because it gets really confusing, like to who you want to invite into your home and identify what's going on.
Awesome. So a good parallel would be if you wanted something like a dental surgery, something was going on here, you can run right to a surgeon and say, like, do surgery and however you want. Or you can go to the dentist and say, check all this out, figure it out for me. And then that guy will, or lady will give it to the surgeon with a plan of what to do.
Yeah.
An IEP is like that initial diagnostic doctor for your home. So you can walk in and understand all these different things. And then with a really good assessment that's thorough, and an inspector who understands much more than just mold, but a few of these other aspects in building science and things, then they can, as an independent company, put a plan together for those other contractors, surgeons for the home. Does that make sense? So it's third-party independent who's getting a good scope of the home, and an IEP stands for Indoor Environmental Professional. That's just an umbrella term. That's like saying Stephanie's a health professional. It's just an umbrella term. What certifications you have, what specialties, where you lean, there's a million certifications underneath what an IEP could be. So you need to be able to vet, if you're an IEP, okay, good. We know that you're not going to also do the surgical remediation on the home. Right. You're probably, hopefully, well-versed in stuff, but not going to apply all of them. So you're well-versed in the HVAC system, but you're probably not a mechanical engineer who's going to size and design the HVAC system. IEP, just thinking of inspectors, assessors, testers, industrial hygienists might be they're called. There's a lot of different names under that umbrella. So you want them to get the really good full scope assessment of the home, understanding the health impacts, and then they can kind of quarterback the rest of the process.
Awesome. Thanks for explaining that. And are all mold inspectors typically IEPs, or are all IEPs mold inspectors? Like, is it like kind of vice versa?
Yeah, all mold inspectors would be an IEP. But under that, when I say
just checking. When
I say IEP, you're in the health industry, right? That could be, I just learned it on a 2-day course, or man, I've been in this and I've been helping all types of people with all types of situations for the last this many years. And right, it's a different. It all depends how much, experience and knowledge you have.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then let's say then yourself shows up to your client's home, and this is where we're going to kind of start to assess like what's going on. You've already like chatted with them about their health, and then they kind of probably have a good idea that there's something clearly going on in the home. So can you kind of walk us through like what maybe are some of the more problematic areas that you typically find in a home that you'll maybe go to first, and like kind of what's your, I kind of keep going back to this saying, but like order of operations, like when you kind of first get to someone's house?
For sure. So the client interview is most important because they know their home better. So it's, where has the water damage happened? Do you know of anything? Any funky smells, any water damage at all? That is my initial. And then picture, where does water go? Well, first it comes from the sky, and so you follow it, and everybody can do this. Go visualize where the water is falling from the sky and landing on the roof and moving this way. And wow, if it pools right here and it's just seeping into the basement, you're already onto something. So picturing just simply where water goes, and or where it comes from and where it goes, how the drainage is, and all that around the home. So exterior usually is what I do first, but then of course the hot spots of where pipes and running water is. It's pretty wild that we do thousands and thousands of gallons of water inside of a home, and any little thing can bust, and all of a sudden a lot of things get damaged. It's a pretty risky business. But so bathrooms, huge one, and there are just certain signs that you start to see, like if there's cracks and gaps in the tile, and it's just looking pretty rough, it's just likely that water won the battle and went through the grout and is potentially back there. To what degree? It's very hard to know until you really get a deeper dive assessment. And then looking at kind of the building envelope. So this is definitely a different discussion, more kind of building science, but an inspector should understand how air moves and how shared air can happen in a home. Yeah. You might think what's behind your wall doesn't move into the home. It definitely does. There's microscopic, what I would say, like wind storms that happen, very, very small, from wall cavities into homes, from attics into the home, from crawl spaces or basements up into the home. Okay. So the building envelope is what keeps the outside out and the inside in. Okay. So if you had a boat, you would want to keep the water out. Any puncture in the boat, you allow the water in. When you're doing that with air, that air is carrying with it particles, spores, humidity, whatever's in that space, right through those gaps and cracks in the home. I was at a client's house recently, and she's like, oh my gosh, it all clicked. Their crawl space was, someone had done a blower door test on their home to really see how leaky it was from an air leakage standpoint. And their crawl space and attic was extremely leaky. So I'm like, if you didn't have any mold in your house, you're breathing that amount of attic air and crawl space air, and you're only going to get those places as clean as possible, but they'll never be, you wouldn't sleep on there, right?
Right, exactly.
So if you're pulling that amount, because the blower door test showed how connected those two spaces were to the home, it was fascinating. I'm like, if we solved all the mold problems in the areas you live in, we're still having an uphill battle if we don't seal the attic floor and the crawl space ceiling, which is the places you're living right in between, sandwiched in between. Every time you kick on the HVAC system, open doors and windows, turn on exhaust fans, we're moving air and cycling it and pressurizing it in different places. So this is how you got to have that understanding of like, okay, the home is an interconnected system, and we got to get these places to at least decent shape and not have these massive exposure pathways from nasty spots. That make sense?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's just so interesting. It's just like working with like a human body. It's, really diagnosing the house and seeing where the leaks are and what you need to fix, and then, where you go from there. So that's just so interesting. I guess if we're kind of going along that line of, relating it to like someone's body, then what kind of testing are you using that you bring with you, like to the home to like then further like examine like, okay, like maybe is this actually the issue or issues, and like how bad might it be?
Yeah, great question. I was going to go there next. Perfect segue.
Great.
The more assessments you do and more you just simply know, like let's just all agree that crawl spaces are probably has more bacteria, humidity, soil gases, bugs, whatever, filth down there. Then I could test if I want to get curious of like what there is down there, but the lab could test for anything, as you know, like from bacteria to VOCs, mold, odors, gases, all types of stuff. Do you want to get ultra curious on what exactly it is, or do you want to kind of assess it and then say it probably needs cleaning and it probably needs sealing? Like it's just going to be a best practice. I don't always need a test to tell me that. Tests to me are very secondary to the assessment and to all these things we're talking about. I always tell people, if I was given an option, you have 4 hours to inspect this home with your flashlight, moisture meter, all the on-site tools, but you're not allowed to take one official lab test, versus you're allowed to take as many lab tests as you want, but you're actually not allowed to inspect the home. Like, actually, I'll take the test for you and just give you 20 results. I would get way more done from the no testing assessment based on all these different things that you can tell visually. So testing to me is an important secondary thing to the assessment to target types, amounts, severity, and maybe comparatives to different places in the home. It helps us maybe prioritize, this is a bigger issue than this one. But again, some people are just curious on those types and amounts. For me, the simplest summary of tests, if you see something visually that looks funky and suspect, you can take a tape or swab sample directly of it. That's going to be the most accurate. I mean, the lab tech is going to count the spores and the types and tell you what's on it and presence versus absence, and then the type. And then you can do air sampling that is, like any tool, very wasted in some ways and very useful in other ways. It really depends on the person doing them. Do you want to do an air sample in the center of your biggest room, collecting a little bit of air for 5 minutes? It's probably not going to help you determine much of anything. Versus we saw with our borescope camera behind a wall, there's something funky here. Let's put an air sample there as well to help determine what's in that wall. And it's much more accurate, and now it helps us. As well as with these ERMI tests or dust collection.
Yeah.
A lot of people are taking them and they're left with the same question they had before the ERMI test, which is, where did this come from? How long has it been there? Do we have any actual production areas or sources of mold in the home? The ERMI just shows this kind of combination of all the dust that you collected on that medium. So you're still left with, I need to go find the sources and get those handled, or else I'm just going to be cleaning and testing and on that hamster wheel. So again, every test is very subject to the inspection and then has its purpose for kind of what the actual plan is to what to do with them.
Yeah, thank you for explaining that. I think, and understandably so, when people are going through, mold issues in their house, they're not feeling well, a lot of people like try to run straight to the testing that they can order really quickly and then get done. And sometimes like all that information, especially when it's coming back, not looking the greatest, can be extremely overwhelming. And then also that we know that's going to really stress out the nervous system and, create a whole host of things. So, speaking to that, do you typically then recommend, like, if someone just like meets with you for the first time and they're like, okay, should I just like order the ERMI and the endo testing now to just identify, or should I have somebody come out, or like what will you just kind of tell them? You need to have somebody come out, inspect the place first, because a visual inspection is going to be so much better than just running like 5 or 7 different ERMI tests, which by the way can really add up in a lot of money. So it gets stressful that way too.
Of course. Yeah, that's a great question. And I have a lot of that. And what I like to do is hypothetically answer, okay, we have 3 ERMIs done in your home on each floor, and they're all high. Hypothetically, let's say that happened. You're still going to be left with, like I said, what do we do now? So that money in a way like just gave you some levels that you might need to be even more kind of confused or concerned about. What you could have maybe done for lower costs, when I tell people, is for $100 and 3 hours of time, you can probably find more than what 10 surfaces of dust on an ERMI can tell you, or any random 2 or 3 tests. What is an hour or a few hours of time and $100? A few hours of time is learning water damage spots, places where dust buildup and humidity, chronic humidity can build up and water damage will happen. And then you find a bright flashlight, a moisture meter, and even a $30 borescope that can attach to your phone, and there's a live feed. And it's going to take some time. Some people are way more kind of willing and able-bodied to do some of that assessment themselves. But you're going to get so much more found to just know where to look and how to look. And that's what I want to help empower people with as well, because it's probably a better use of money. You're then best prepped if you do want to bring an inspector in. And why you would need an inspector at that point is you've already found some things, the home, that client interview is even more valuable. That inspector goes to those spots, does the rest of the house, puts the whole picture together, and then writes up a protocol or a surgical plan for the remediator to handle it properly. And so you've already done a ton of that homework. If you just give some ERMIs to someone that are high, which a lot of them come back high, that inspector is basically saying, okay, I'll probably find mold here because I will in almost every home to some degree. So it's, you know what I mean? So and it is a cost benefit analysis. If ERMIs were $10 a pop, I'd say by all means run them. But for the price point, for what you're like getting, it's usually a secondary, thing as well. So if someone's willing and able to learn and do some of that, groundwork to get those tools and to walk around, you're going to get a lot of things handled. And right now, Brantley, May, and I are mainly him. He's working on this homeowner inspection course. It's going to be amazing. And I'll finish up with a few of the modules. But if we could get every homeowner just like aware of this stuff, there's so many inspections I've been on. And within 5 or 10 minutes, I was like, guys, you didn't really need me. Look, there's standing water in the crawl space this high, or you open the HVAC system, you're like, this is what you're breathing. And it's like some basic things. And not that we don't need professionals, but homeowners
Right.
can do a lot more than they know.
Well, what's, so refreshing about talking to you about this is that it's just like creating this empowerment for people, right? And it's like giving them that power back in their own home or where they're living, because we just like rely so much on testing nowadays. But it's like, even myself with working with people, I want to gain an insight into like how they feel in their own body. And through like
Yes.
a really good history, we can really understand like where the issues might lie, and then what could really be going on with them. Just through, like, we can gain like 80% of what's going on with somebody through a good history. And it's like giving that person that power back. And that's what you're doing. That's exactly what you're saying, is like, let's learn some of the stuff that we can do to identify and just kind of keep up with the home. So I really love this course that you're talking about that's coming out, because the more empowerment we can give to people, the better, truly, when it comes to this.
For sure. Yeah, and
Yeah.
you said it right. I mean, you probably know the limitations on biological testing,
Yeah.
but those three tests I just mentioned, surface, air, and dust, are all like, I would submit that they're even 10 times more limited than any of the biological tests. Like, you know
Right.
how to read the blood samples or all the other ones, but gosh, those three that we have are like, they're just so limited, and they can
Right.
be helpful, but they're
Yeah.
yeah, they're not the
No,
end all
I
be
love
all.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love this conversation. So kind of going back to then the inspection process, like how long does a typical inspection usually take for you? And then like, I'm guessing that's probably what people should be looking into if they have a mold inspector come in, that they shouldn't be spending just an hour of time. They should be spending more. So how long does it typically take for you?
That's what I would have started with. Probably don't get an inspector that's under an hour, one or two quick
Okay.
samples. They're very sample heavy, and just run some samples and leave. There's a slang term in the industry called pump jockeys, which is a air pump. They just pull some air, barely even
funny.
inspect your house, and they leave. Not really an inspector, right?
Right.
If you're listening to this, you're already going to be like, oh, they probably need to be speaking a certain type of language and know some things and be a little bit more comprehensive, rather than, hey, yeah, for $400 we'll come in, take 2 air samples, and that's what you'll know about your home. Again, you can get more done yourself than that as well. It really does depend on the home, the layout, the square footage, the scope of what we're really doing. But there's been smaller houses that take me a very long time, because there's a lot of cracks and crevices and things you find, and they just take longer.
Yeah.
But between 3 to 6 hours, and I've been at homes for 9. So it's just, it's just depends on how in depth. But to me, I'm not going to leave till I'm done, until I know that the house is, from attic to basement and everything in between, is really checked as thoroughly as possible. Because
great.
this is the thing. If I did go in and say, I'm just going to check a third of the home, well, I can prioritize based on this third of the home. You need to get these three things done. But if I check the other 2/3 and I found a really significant problem, now that goes into priority number 1. It's like
Right.
if you said, just give me 1 or 2 of your symptoms, or just give me your diet
Yeah,
alone, and without all the blind spots of
Pieces.
the rest of their lifestyle, then you wouldn't know how to prioritize. Oh, you have a systemic infection here versus you have a rolled ankle.
Yeah, no,
and
for
that's
sure.
in the home. You kind of got to know the whole home as a system, interconnected.
Yeah.
To say, okay, I can confidently give. That's why it's like hard for me to do an inspection, in one small area or in a short period of time, because then my recommendations are going to be limited. I won't be as confident in, this is your red flag, this is yellow flag, and this is kind of
Yeah.
prioritizing those effectively.
No, thanks for speaking to that. So that's incredible to hear that you have been in someone's home up to 9 hours, but that's, again, it's like really like you have this like moment that you're there in time to really help this person, and they're not feeling
sure.
well. So it's like, let's figure out where the source might lie. So that's really important, and that's really great. I have one more question regarding inspections, and I kind of want to dive into some of the more problem areas of the home that we see, like you had mentioned before, like HVAC, humidity issues, dust, all that stuff. But so I have a question about mold dogs. Now, have you ever consulted with utilizing that for individuals that you've worked with, or like what is like how helpful can that support be, I guess, in using like and identifying what's going on in the home?
Yeah, for sure. Just like an inspector, some can be very good and some not so good. With the dogs, the toughest thing is they don't communicate. So
This is true.
in a way, they do very, very slightly. So it does depend on the dog's training. It does depend on the handler and how well they know their dog, and also do they have some IEP, knowledge
with them.
themselves to kind of, now you're getting 2 in 1. So a dog to me is a tool that no human diagnostic tool can have. So it can be really helpful. Some dogs have found some things that I'm like, wow, yeah, I probably wouldn't have found that. You just don't know types, amounts, and severity, right? Are they tagging something that's the size of a dime in the corner of some place with really barely any path of exposure versus, oh, wow, they just kind of uncovered a bigger issue here that would have been tougher to find. So yeah, some mold dogs, very, very good. And it's really also about their handlers and kind of their process, like how much value really, getting for that. Because, and I want to shout out Mold Dog USA, they're a fantastic company, really good people. They understand the importance of an IEP. Their handlers know that, but they really know that, okay, we just tag spots. You'll probably need an IEP to consult on next steps or to even do an assessment if needed in addition and pair it with ours. We did a house together. That was a ton of fun in Alabama. So the dog runs around first and, then I go and I'm there twice as long pretty much, but it's really good, like full picture. If someone has the budget for it, get both if it's a good mold dog company, but just don't expect the mold dog to communicate building science principles and write up the exact plan for the home. It just depends where you want to allocate resources that they can hunt some things down. I have also seen that they tag spots that's like, this was not worth it, or they tag 40 spots in the home and it's like, where do we even start, because all they're doing is tagging. And did they just want to treat that day to tag a spot and get a reward, or was this really funny. A problem? So there's a lot of things with it. So
cool. Oh, how interesting. Yeah, that's cool. No, thanks for answering that, because that's just like fascinating to me. And then I love how you were talking about like use it in conjunction with an IEP, right? Like someone who has the understanding and knowledge behind that, rather than the dog just running in and like tagging a bunch of stuff and not really giving that much information back, I guess. So yeah. Cool. Yeah. So, all right, let's go ahead and talk about some of the things you were kind of mentioning a little bit earlier on in the podcast. So regarding dust. So can you speak to the importance of that and what it is that you talk to your clients about, like regarding like dust levels in the home and like how this can be a little bit problematic for like their health?
For sure. Awesome. So we'll never live in a completely dust-free home 100% of the time. But it is fascinating to me that we live in these enclosures that we do end up breathing the same air over and over. But if we did live outside, when would you ever breathe that air again?
That's a good
point. You
point.
can almost never breathe the same air over and over outside.
Outside, yeah.
So no matter how bad the pollution is outside, you're probably not huffing a source of pollution right there as much as now we're in an enclosure. And there's a lot more of that. Like you could probably breathe the same air a handful of times, or the person next to you, and it just stays in. That's why you really need good ventilation, circulation and filtration to really help with that. But, that's just what we're dealing with indoors. So now you enclose dust levels, which we'll talk about, bacteria, carbon dioxide, potentially carbon monoxide. We have combustion gases, chemicals. I mean, the amount of things that happen in the air in an enclosure is pretty fascinating. So I'm a mold, specialist, but when people get so tunnel vision on the 4-letter M word alone, and as that's their biggest thing for indoor air quality, they end up missing like, no, I have a huge important thing we have to do here because mold is way lower on your list, in the home. And dust levels can be part of that. So dust is probably coming from outside, attic, below, or wall cavities. It can be building up from different places, but now it's like harboring in carpets or any more porous material is going to harbor even more of it. So if you don't clean, it's just going to build up. Cleaning is very, very helpful because high dust levels are some of the first places that mold spores can colonize if the moisture or humidity levels are high enough. So if I had a really, really dusty room and kind of just, let's say I've misted that room or fogged it with a whole bunch of humidity, or it just went to that 70%, the first place to be forming is on the dust on those surfaces and then start to really colonize elsewhere. That's why when you see mold on a metal vent, it's not growing in the metal, it's growing on the dust or oils on the metal.
Got it.
Because you can't plant to plant in metal. It's colonizing at a microscopic level on the dust first. So it's an easy colonizer from all whatever's in that dust. So the lower dust content's really good for a lot of different reasons, but that's one of them.
I really like how you spoke to like other things in the home too, because like you said, a lot of people do hyperfixate on mold. That's the thing that we hear a lot about nowadays. You know, luckily, again, like we kind of alluded to in the beginning, more information coming out about it, but also at the same time, people hyperfixate on it. But I've had
Yeah,
clients where, you know, I was like, I don't think mold is your issue. And then we found radon as an issue, or we found
for
like
sure.
carbon monoxide issues, like there was like a leak or something going on in their home, like, and so it's like there's other things that can be the problem.
Yes.
And I think that's the importance of like what you're kind of speaking to is like we need to have, you need, when someone comes into your home to really figure out what's going on, it shouldn't always be totally hyperfixated just on mold. We should be thinking about all the other things that could be potentially at play too, because sometimes it can be a combination. I'm sure in your experience of working with lots of clients now, you've seen it not just be mold, being other things as
100%.
well.
Yeah. And the toughest ones are the ones that are kind of odorless, and like radon is a tough one.
Yeah.
You can check some things that's maybe radon specific. I'm not a radon professional. I also know that there's an upside when you're testing for radon, which I think that's probably a smart test. Test with a
And it's cheap
monitor.
too.
So there's you can test with a monitor. There's a company called Aranet, and they have a carbon dioxide, humidity, and temperature monitor. They also have a radon monitor. So the continuous monitoring is better for these things I'm about to mention. Humidity. So humidity is important kind of all the time, but to know trends in your house is most important. You probably know this with the body. You can take a test at one time, but the trend, if you could test someone every single day for a month, that's a really helpful trend, or month to month. So with radon, with a few of these other things, it will kind of like cycle. And so if you have chronically high amounts over a trend, you got a significant problem you got to get on top of. I mean, there's really no like carbon monoxide, for instance, there's really no safe level. But for a lot of these things, it is good to have more of a continuous monitoring if possible. So that's why I tell people like the inspection is really important to find sources, because really water damage is what you're after, which is going to handle mold and bacteria, which can form there. And you're going to kind of handle it the same way, remove, clean, the proper way. We might talk about that. But with these other gases, VOCs, chemicals, odors, those are tough because they're, with VOCs, that could be material related. So some of that, it's like, do you want to test it or just say the brand new carpet's just going to have to off gas for a period of time, or let's just get rid of it? So there's just some of those decisions. So it's just a knowledge base to have. And then maybe we grab monitors as homeowners rather than pay someone a ton of money for that one time test that they're there, when really a monitor would have told you the trend and you would have gotten way better data.
Super cool learning about that monitor that you were just talking about, like with radon and some of the other things. Like I wasn't aware of that. So that's actually very cool. And I am in total
There's
agreement
VOC
with
monitors
you.
too.
Oh, wow. See, I also had a client, couple years ago who, I mean, her big thing was VOCs, moved into a fully new built house. And that was,
For sure.
there was no mold actually. I mean, well, there's always some mold, but there was no issue. And it was VOC with testing and everything. I mean, that's what we came up with. And, anywho, but yeah, no, so
I believe it.
very interesting to hear about the monitor. And I agree with you 100% on that. It's like with humidity monitoring, like understanding like where in the home might be a little bit more prone or things like that. And then taking measures to be able to support that, which leads me to my next question is regarding humidity levels. So, what is the optimal humidity levels that we're looking for like in the home? And do you recommend like whole house dehumidifiers, or like just having like portable ones that you can place in certain parts of the house? Things like that. Yeah.
Very good. I'll keep this as tight as possible. So the optimal range would be about 35 to 55%. That's relative humidity. But another important data point is something called dew point. And without getting too much into that, you can get a humidity monitor that you can press a button and it calculates dew point. Dew point is the temperature that your cold drink, when you walk out on a hot day, starts to sweat. Okay.
Yep.
So if the dew point outside is 40 degrees, or no, 70 degrees, higher dew point, then it's anything at 70 degrees or lower is going to start to sweat. So same thing happens in the home. If you have a higher dew point, it means there's a lot of surfaces in that temperature range that can sweat. So your ductwork and a lot of things, even walls. So the higher the dew point, the easier it is to sweat. Wow. Dew point is from high humidity and certain temperatures, starting to collide at that. So you do want to keep in the 35 to 55 range for, the best, most optimal ranges, and there's health complications even with like ultra low. So don't stick in the teens or 20s, please. That's a whole host of different things.
No good.
And trust me, getting to 40% will not cause mold. It'll get you in an optimal range, 35 to 55%. When you start getting chronically damp in a home, that's a big problem for sure. So 70% humidity is like you're going to be popping mold up in random places because it's just like a rainforest effect. And the final thing on this is that it's the chronic buildup and dampness that's an issue. So you taking a shower is not going to grow mold in the bathroom right away. Exhaust it out, let it dehumidify a little bit. Again, it's trends and letting it kind of dehumidify itself. So you can mix air, you can exhaust air, and then you can get a dehumidifier, like you said, to pull that stuff out. Portable dehus are great, and then when it comes to the whole home dehus that's attached to your HVAC system, you need an HVAC professional who really understands what they're doing on that install. It will be fairly expensive, and it's probably only needed in more humid climates. And you again have to wonder, why is your humidity high in the home in the first place? Is it so much outside air coming in, so it's a building envelope problem, not an HVAC problem? Is it occupants? You got 9 kids in a small house, you're probably going to produce a bit more humidity, right? Indoors, in a lot of different ways. So that's, you got to just, where's humidity coming from? Why is it high? Get to the why. And at minimum, if it's high and you don't know why, just get the portable dehu and start to pull that stuff out of the air ASAP. That always stops the bleeding.
Nice.
Yeah.
No, I pretty much have lived in like 2 very humid places in my entire life. And I grew up in Florida and then left when I was 18. And now I live in California. But for the majority of my California time, I've lived by the beach. So it was like in the last place that I was in, we chatted with you, actually. My husband and I chatted with you. Oh my God, it was so humid. And anywho, that was a whole learning process for us as well. But yes, and now moving just 20 minutes away from the beach has like significantly, it's so much easier to control humidity. I mean, it's not really ever an issue, but we have portable dehumidifiers that we use if we need to. But that's really cool to hear about the whole house dehumidifier. I was curious your thoughts on that versus just using but it's always a matter of, why is this happening in the first place? Because you always want to understand the why, correct? Yeah.
For sure. And I do recommend dehumidifiers in almost every basement. It's subgrade, which means underground. So there's going to be just more of that hydrostatic pressure from the groundwater that might be moving into the home. So it's just a safer bet to dehumidify the basement. And then crawl spaces too. If you have a sealed crawl space that's not ventilated to the outside, you want to have a dehumidifier down there. If it's a ventilated one, then you'll dehumidify the outdoor air and you'll waste all types of money. So
good to know.
You got to contain the environment to dehumidify. Don't dehumidify the outside. Yeah.
There you go. That's really important. Important piece.
And people are like, can I open the windows? Can I not? I'm like, don't be scared to open the windows. Just understand the introduction of all types of whatever's outside and humidity that might come in. And then when you close the windows, put your dehu on and pull that moisture out that just came in. It's all balance.
What about in attics? Do you ever recommend like using one in an attic at all, or is it typically more like
you can, but attics can be complex depending on if you're doing a conditioned or unconditioned attic, and that basically means, do you have your roof deck spray foamed or insulated? And if so, that's part of your house, and you have to keep humidity low because whatever's in that attic space is very attached to your home. It's inside that building envelope. Or are you going to seal the attic floor? And then this is basically, the attic is outside. So you just want it to ventilate. You wouldn't put the dehumidifier in there because you're dehumidifying the outdoor air. So it's about deciding which attic you have, committing to that, and then managing it. So
this is great because I am not a building biologist. I don't understand all this. So that's why I'm like, attic, maybe, I don't know. Okay. Yeah. What about, go ahead.
No. If you have an unconditioned attic, which most of homes are unconditioned attics, just if you ventilate it well, it will do well. Yeah. You want the dew point in the attic to be the same dew point as outside, ideally.
Yeah. And it kind of comes back to like what you were mentioning before with like the airflow and everything. It's like, you always want that, like, you don't want that stagnant air. Like you need like some good airflow like throughout the home, correct? Because that's another issue in it too. So speaking to your point on the attic piece, it's like, you don't want it to be just like stagnant and stale and nothing's being ventilated from there. So, okay.
100%.
Makes perfect sense. Quick question on bathrooms before we move into talking about the HVAC systems. So with bathrooms, you mentioned grout like a little bit ago, which, is the case for a lot of people's bathrooms. And so, how often, like, do you recommend like people like addressing grout, like cleaning it slash, maybe like resealing the grout, just to be, on the safer side? Like, is there like a specific amount of time, like you recommend people do that?
Yeah, that's a good question and kind of a tough one to give like it must be at a certain
Yeah.
time frame or whatever, just based on how much it's being used and how whatever. The first thing to do is a bright flashlight, check all the grout lines. And if you have any visible cracks, spaces, I mean, some of these tiles I'm in showers, I'm like, guys, we've had an open gap between these tiles for how long? Like,
And you're showering
like,
there.
yeah, like the water's gonna find the space. So the first thing is just visually with a flashlight, can we see any hairline cracks or places where water would go in, and seal that up after you thoroughly check to see if damage is already done.
Awesome.
If your grout's like growing mold often, it's one of a few things. One is it's just growing on the surface of it, and you're cleaning it, and it's still got its roots, so it's like a plant just growing back. And it's surface growth, and that'll be kind of annoying, but you need to kind of dehumidify and exhaust well.
Yep.
If it keeps coming back because it's already behind the grout and it's growing through, like the roots of the mold are like kind of behind and going through, then unfortunately you just probably have to get someone to assess it and maybe even get that out, because you got to see what's behind the tile and remove that. That's the only way. So I would say the main thing is seal up what you can. Squeegee after showers can help a lot. So the water's not just sitting there. Have the exhaust fan going for 20 minutes or so. And then there is something I really like called the endurance coating from Superstratum. So spray that. That's like low cost, high reward of an additional seal. And it's just tough with the cleaning of grout. Is just have it as part of your maintenance schedule.
Yeah.
Every house is different. I can't say exactly. Like, just do it often as you can. But I think those measures I just said would be most important for prevention.
Well, that's why I like your approach so much, and why I have you on today to chat about it, is because you are always mentioning it's like kind of like a case by case dependency, right? And so it's like, always understanding the why first, right? Knowing what you're dealing with. And then if you need to, then brings a professional in to like support. But I also really like that you brought up the endurance coating, because you had actually mentioned that to us like 6 or so months ago, that we love that. It's great. And I actually recommended it to a client yesterday. So yeah, really,
Awesome.
really great product. Yeah.
I know.
So,
I was very, very impressed that it could do that. It's good.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
I know, it's great. So let's then talk about HVAC systems. So this is a question that I get asked a lot, and I don't typically know how to answer it, because again, this is not my area of specialty. So how are HVAC systems like super prone to having like some mold issues? Like why might they have like an issue, and how often I guess maybe are you seeing that being a problem in like the homes that you're inspecting?
Very high amount of homes.
Wow.
That's a big key contributor. Wow. So if the system itself is a source, like there's mold in the system, we'll talk about how and why and all that stuff. It's now kicking on and distributing everywhere. So that's a pretty significant source. That's different than a little patch under a window. Right. That's again a little more systemic exposure from what's inside the HVAC system. The HVAC system also, when it kicks on, it moves the air even more. So it can also pressurize different places, and maybe it's causing a mold source in your house to be further mobilized because the system is pumping the air and moving it around. So it's either a source in itself, or sometimes it can heighten sources that are already there because of the pressurization. It's a big machine, and it needs to be handled with care, because a lot of people we're just going to swap out our HVAC system. Well, before you just swap it out for the exact same size and design, what if that was part of why it even grew mold in the first place? So a lot of these people who get a mold test in their HVAC system that shows up high, they just say, well, we just need a new HVAC system. That could be true, but the new HVAC system should be put in by someone who understands building science and indoor air quality and sizing and design, and be more mechanically engineer minded. So without getting too deep on this, the home has an amount of square footage. It has windows. It has insulation. It's facing a certain direction. Those all play into something called a manual J. That's a calculation size for the HVAC system for your home. And I'll let the guys way above my pay grade do that. But if the system is oversized, for instance, we're going to have humidity issues 9 times out of 10 if it's way oversized. Okay. And sometimes people think just bigger is better. It's going to cool the house faster. Yes, but it won't dehumidify like it should properly.
Wow.
So there's things with like too small or too big. Most times it's too big that are being put in. I was at a house yesterday, massive, beautiful mansion on a lake. So we're already going to deal with a ton of, vapor drive from the lake, but there's 5 HVAC systems in the house. And so many of them have mold like in the supply vents, just, spraying out. And 5 HVAC systems, I would say 3 of them are significantly contaminated. And if the system is not sized well, designed well, balanced well with the other systems, like the more systems you have, the more they got to really dial in what's covering what and all of that. If you only have one HVAC system, like get that one right, for your home. So manual J will do sizing, and then there's duct design stuff. Why systems can grow mold is dust and humidity mixing and or condensation happening as well. Condensation is that sweating. If you have the system and the ductwork in a really, really hot attic, a really nasty crawl space, you're just going to be more prone. The ducts themselves are very leaky from an air leakage standpoint. So every place where the duct attaches here, and if there's a seam that's open, that is moving air. And I can see it with my smoke pen on inspections. Like, wow, you're getting a lot of this attic air that's very dusty pulling right into your system. And so now we're introducing more dust. And so if the filters can't keep up or not being changed on time and not a good filter, not a well-sealed filter, you're introducing dust. If then humidity goes up and condensation sweating points happen, and there's a way for that dust to colonize mold, that's usually how this happens. And it's way more likely on softer insulated ductboard than it is on like a metal surface. Again, the insulated ductboard is like more of a soil for the mold to grow on than a piece of metal.
Right. Yeah. Like you were saying earlier. Yeah. No, that's really interesting. So let's say somebody is like suspecting that like, okay, it feels like it's probably coming from my HVAC system, prior to like getting a professional out to really check. Is there like a little test that, like you mentioned, like maybe doing like a possible test, like just to see like, I don't know, like a tap test or like a surface sample test or something like that? Is that something like people can use, or is that like a little bit nuanced because there's so many different parts of the HVAC system that could be the issue and it might not get picked up on the test and provide a false negative?
No, it's a good question. And definitely doable, but the first thing you can do as a homeowner without being too destructive is check inside the supply vents. The supply is pushing the air out, and getting a flashlight up to those and seeing like, am I seeing like it's usually a greenish, blackish type of circular pattern, something in there. We find it all the time, especially in more humid climates, but just a flashlight into your supply vents. Then the return side, if you have filters there, you pop the return filters out, and now you see the tunnel of return air that's pulling the air in towards it, because it's going in the return and going out the supply. So you're just part of the system. They both meet at the air handler. That's where all the ducts meet. So with that, if you can, as a homeowner, pop the air handler open. That's one way to check inside of there, because if you have heavy dust buildup, this again, circular pattern, textured, funky looking stuff, it might be mold. That's where you want to check. And then if you see anything that you're in question of, even if you just want to test the dust, that's definitely a good place to test. Swab or tape and just test the dust and send it off.
Does it also have that like green, black, circular look there where, like you mentioned, where like the air handler area where everything like meets, or will it look more like white or like have a different look to it, or can it look all different ways?
All different ways. Yeah. Cool. The supplies, it's more so that white, black, and green and black, sometimes some white. But in the system, if you're just seeing like, even just in the system, like a ton of dust buildup, like that's like, we got to get this issue. Yeah. We got to get this cleaned up. Yeah.
All right. Awesome. Well, then that kind of brings me to just asking you, like, let's say now we've done our inspections and we understand there's an issue like somewhere in the house. And so like, what does like proper like remediation and look like, and cleaning and, making sure that things are well contained and that it's not creating a worse issue for the people in the home, because they're already not feeling great. So we don't want them to feel worse. So what are some recommendations you're making based off of these things so that people get like the proper, individuals in the home to make sure things go well?
Yeah, great question. I have a lot of stuff on my YouTube channel, like breaking this down with whiteboards and saying like, here's mold
Cool.
remediation kind of wrapped up. I have the mold removal guide, which is like 15 pages of, some pictures and outlines on this. It's like really
Great.
helpful in understanding. To encapsulate it is really the whole mold remediation process is basically realizing what mold can't be just like cleaned off, what has to be removed, because again, it's embedded into that material. So it's determining if it's in drywall, that comes out. On insulation soft dirt. In carpet, that's off, right? So all the porous items that has visible growth, that's got to go. The next layer back of mold remediation would be removing the mold out of the material that is still going to stay there. So for instance, if you're not going to remove a structural beam in the house and it's got a little bit of fuzzy stuff on there, you can clean that. There's just methods on how to abrasively pull the mold out.
Okay.
That's HEPA vacuuming, wire brushing, sanding, pulling the mold out of there. And then the final, which most important, is to get the area completely dust free. That's all the contamination that happens during what we just did, the demolition and abrasive cleaning. Now there's a bunch of dust, which is holding spores and stuff on the surfaces. So that's like mold remediation, like 101 is remove the materials that can't be saved, remove mold out of the materials that will be saved, and then get the area dust free.
Okay.
That's the surgical plan for mold. And it should be, like you mentioned, contained to that area so that we're not cross-contaminating to the rest of the house. A company that's certified with the IICRC doing the S520 mold remediation standards, if they're following those to a T, they're going to be doing well. If they understand mold sensitive people and taking a few extra steps to get the area really clean and taking pride in their work and very much understanding they have to do this like a surgical procedure, that's also good. So at minimum, look for that certification, IICRC S520, and they will contain it. They'll usually do a negative air machine that pumps air out of that room, not into the rest of the house. They'll have air scrubbers cleaning the air, and then they'll go ahead and do the manual labor that's needed. And you don't need, I just mentioned everything there. You don't really need heavy duty chemicals to do good mold remediation. Just think of what we just talked about. Do you need a chemical to rip drywall? No. Do you need a chemical to wire brush, HEPA vacuum, and sand the mold out of the material? Not necessarily. Can you help it with certain things? Yeah, but you don't really need that. And then finally with the dust free, cleaning, that's just HEPA vacuum, damp wipe down, HEPA vacuum again.
Awesome. Yeah, no, for those listening, I actually was looking at your YouTube videos and that guide that you mentioned earlier. I always like to, really dig into the person that I'm going to be like interviewing and just kind of seeing the tips and tricks that you offer. And you really do provide like such valuable info. So for everyone listening, definitely check those guides out and the YouTube out, because it really is like, I love how much you dial these things in so people have as much information. And again, that kind of empowerment necessary, to help them on their journey, I guess.
Thank you. Yeah. And then if you know that stuff, you're not going to hire the wrong company. Like just have some confidence in yourself that like,
for sure,
if you know a car, you're probably not going to get a really crappy mechanic.
Yeah.
Because you know the car. So same deal here. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, I have one final question before I let you go. And you actually just kind of mentioned it in an analogy about cars. I just wanted to know, how often do you find the car being an issue? Like if you were just like, wow, let's say this person works from home, so they don't actually have a workplace they go to, so the office isn't an issue, but like their home is fine. Like, do you ever find the car to be an issue? Like maybe like the air system in the car?
It is a tough one because the car is like going to only really be conducive on the carpets or seats if it's porous, right?
Okay.
The metal's not really, or it's going to be, like you mentioned, in the air system. And so all I would say usually is change the cabin filter out. If you're feeling worse in the car, the whole thing, just follow your senses. If you're feeling worse or it's smelling musty and nasty, you had left the windows open and everything got crazy damp and gross, like, that's a higher likelihood for it being rough. But very hard to tell. And I would say, clean it, detail it well, change the cabin filter, and it's tougher to get into any of the inner components without doing anything extreme.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you. Yeah. Well, I always like to ask, every guest before I let them go, is there any final things that you wanted to mention to people listening on the podcast? Any words of wisdom? And then where can people find you to work with you?
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. Having the right team is very, very important. And so having Stephanie, having people who work on the body from a really good, comprehensive way and have the heart that you do and a lot of care is a huge part of this. So I do want to like bring people back to their own intuition and power and agency, because there's so much out there. And if you just grab and react and kind of adopt other people's stories as yours too quickly and all this stuff. Like it gets so chaotic and scary and convoluted and stressful. But if you can just like take a breath and learn a bit, empower yourself with knowledge, and then intuitively, do I feel good about this health practitioner I'm working with, this inspector I'm vetting, this remediator? Like, they can be really good on paper, their marketing can be top notch, and they can just not execute well at all. Versus some of the, kind of lamest websites ever have some of the best contractors doing the job. So you got to just really follow, like, how do I feel about these people? They take pride in their work. And that's a whole different aspect that you just need to trust yourself on that process. And then finally, just having hope and knowing that there's solutions ahead of you. Like, there's all kinds of horror stories of things going wrong in every industry all the time, but there's also so much success that can happen also. And some people, mold is the catalyst for an immense amount of growth, an immense amount of learning. Sometimes it's a redirection. It's like, well, we kind of felt like we wanted to move anyway, and maybe that's like a catalyst for your next chapter in life. So there's a lot of different ways to go through and learn this process. It doesn't have to be someone else's. And if you feel like you're called to this industry because you've been through it, that's another big passion of mine. I want to be training more and more inspectors around the country. So please reach out to me about that. If you want to get in this industry, we have high demand, low supply, and there's a way to kind of up the floor in this industry and help a lot more people. So yeah, it doesn't all have to be stressful, difficult, and hard. If you learn and follow your intuition and get with the right team, there really are solutions.
Oh, you really are a gem in the industry. It's wonderful. The educational content you put out, the heart that you also have, and that you're just wanting other people to do the same. And you're just, in this industry, and with all industries, it's like, sometimes it's just like, we just do the best we can and we lead by example. And then we hope that other people can, also help others in the same way. And luckily I've seen so much incredible individuals in this space helping people in a variety of different ways beyond, just what I do or what you do. Like, it can be through, finding that hope again, through meditation, through support groups. Right. And so, it's honestly, I feel so blessed to be a part of it and, the movement moving forward. So thanks for your time. And where can people find you?
Yeah, thank you so much. Everything is Melrose Mold Solutions. Website is like nice and updated and dialed in. So melrosemoldsolutions.com. YouTube page, I'll be putting more up there, but whatever is there is a library of very good info. Instagram, you can definitely message me there. I'll voice note you back when I can. And yeah, everything's Melrose Mold Solutions online.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Andrew. Yeah. Thank you so much for your time. And I can't wait for people to listen to this.
It'll be good. Thank you so much, Stephanie. You're awesome.
Thank you.